Something really, really big is building up here, and Bitcoin seems to be massively benefiting from it right now. The US is broke. The actual debt amounts to over 175 trillion US dollars. And Elon Musk is absolutely right about the numbers. Balachi is confirming Elon Musk's recent warnings here, and Bitcoin is the big winner in all of this. He addresses Elon Musk's warnings and says, yes, Elon Musk is absolutely correct here. Hyperinflation and dollar collapse scenarios are no longer just wild fantasies. But there are also some critical developments. In the US, the tax relief bill has now failed, and many Bitcoiners see this as a major setback. We also need to take a look at this and see what it's all about. And we have some hyperbolic statements from 21 CEO Jack Mallers, who says, the US needs to act immediately and not by 21 million, but 1 million Bitcoin. Before we dive right in, go ahead and smash that like button down below. The Bitcoin price is already doing pretty well right now, but if we get even more likes down there, the Bitcoin price could really take off even more. So everyone hit that like button down below for new all-time highs. Michael Saylor is making it clear once again for all the banana heads who still haven't gotten it. Everyone gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve. That means people who are doing their research now, people who are subscribed here, by the way, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below if you haven't already. Those kinds of people are the ones who will benefit here, and people who basically don't do their homework will eventually have to buy Bitcoin for, 500,000, a million, or even more. That's just the harsh reality here, and you can't just, push it aside. And Michael Saylor makes it clear again. According to him, public companies acquired around 131,000 coins in the second quarter, and thus increased their Bitcoin holdings by 18%. As reported by the data provider Bitcoin Treasuries. ETFs recorded an increase of 8%, or about 111,000 Bitcoin, in the same period. And now the question is, what did retail investors do? Was retail able to keep up here? No, they couldn't. Retail investors missed out on the whole thing, and that's the big warning here from Michael Saylor. If you don't pay attention now, you'll simply get left behind, overtaken. And then at some point, you'll find yourself in a situation where Bitcoin prices are much, much higher, even though you've had the chance all along to front-run all these treasury companies. I mean, for the first time, we have this opportunity. We could buy Bitcoin for $10, $20, $100, $1,000. With regular stock deals, that's often not possible. First, there are some private listings, then some insiders get in and whatever else. And by the time all the insiders have listed the stock and it goes public and so on, it's already risen so much that regular retail investors can't get in on time. But that's exactly what's possible with Bitcoin, even if, for example, people say, the treasury companies and so on are all insiders or those who are involved. Hey guys, you can already buy Bitcoin for $1, for $10, for $100, for $1,000. And people still don't get it. And right now, Bitcoin is really benefiting from a weak dollar. We have a very, very interesting assessment here. Let's take a quick look. Here we can also see the chart. You can just see here how the numbers keep going up. Boom, 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 boom. Here you can see the debt crisis in 2008. Then you see 2020 is here. And basically since 2020, it's shot up even more dramatically. So we currently have the United States money supply, specifically M2, which in the month of May has significantly increased by, a notable 4.5%, and year over year, this crucial economic indicator has reached an unprecedented record value of 21.94 trillion US dollars. This is the 19th consecutive monthly increase, so it's really, really important to take note of that. This surpassed the previous record high of 21.86 trillion US dollars from March 2022. In addition, the inflation-adjusted M2 money supply rose by 2.1% last month compared to the previous year. That's the largest increase since early 2022. Since 2020, the M2 money supply in the US has increased by almost 7 trillion US dollars, or about 45%. Man, oh man, just take a look at this. Since 2020, they've basically almost doubled the money supply here. The purchasing power of the US dollar has been in a perpetual bear market, and this isn't just true for the US dollar. That's also true for other fiat currencies. The euro, the ruble, the yuan, and all the rest, they're not doing much better in comparison either. And we all know this is very, very good for Bitcoin and will definitely keep pushing the Bitcoin price up in the medium and long term. But it actually goes even further. This was one of the worst years in history for the US dollar. The US dollar index fell by 10.8% in the first half of 2025, so minus 10.8%, marking its worst performance in a first half year since the end of the gold-backed Bretton Woods system in 1973. Just think about that for a second. How crazy that is. At the same time, this is also the weakest performance in a 6-month period since 2009. Beyond that, I don't think we even need to look at everything else here anymore. So basically, there would have been more statistics here explaining why the US dollar is doing so poorly. Against the Swiss franc, it's even depreciated by 14.4%, and against the euro by 13.4%. That's always the thing too. People say Bitcoin hasn't hit a new all-time high yet, and so on. In euros, there actually haven't been any real all-time highs yet, or the Bitcoin price is still well below that. So you always have this difference where sometimes the all-time high in US dollars comes maybe a month or two earlier, and then for the euro and the Swiss franc, it might come even later. And in other, even weaker fiat currencies, the all-time highs are, of course, much, much higher, like, for example, Zimbabwe dollars, Argentine pesos, or something along those lines. And here, it's also really important what Lynn Alden always says. She always says, nothing stops this train. And what she means is that nothing is stopping this train, the debt train. And she says this is by no means a cynical view because she says it's actually based on, well, Austrian philosophy. You should focus on what is within your sphere of influence and not on what is outside of it, things that are very, very likely to happen anyway, no matter what. And it is very, very likely that the money supply will continue to increase. It is very, very likely that the amount of money being printed and the speed of it, well, in the Bitcoin space, you'd say the torque will continue to increase, that it's very, very likely the leverage here will also keep rising. That means the speed will increase. Money printing will become even more excessive, even more aggressive. But you shouldn't get upset about it. Instead, you should focus on what you can control yourself. And that simply means building up your Bitcoin holdings here, creating a safety cushion with Bitcoin, setting up a hedge with Bitcoin. This isn't investment advice, but that's basically what Lynn Alden wants to get across to you here. Guys, you don't need to get upset. There is a solution. There is, yes, Bitcoin, the perfect store of value. We don't need to get upset about the old system anymore. We don't need to rant about politicians or central banks. No. Here, we can be part of a better, new, fairer world. A better, fairer, more transparent financial system. And how awesome is that, guys? We don't have to get into it with anyone anymore. We also don't need to take to the streets. No, we have Bitcoin. And that's why Balachi made a very, very important post here. He says here, the USA is broke also shows the national debt again, and it's just totally crazy when you take a look at this. Here you can see, for example, the US debt in relation to GDP was only above the 100% mark during World War II. And now, if we look at the current situation, we're way above the 100% mark, and we're not even in a world war right now. Well, some people might say it's a creeping war or something like that. But Balachi then adds a very, very interesting assessment here and says, the debt amounts to over 175 trillion US dollars. And Elon Musk is absolutely right with those numbers. However, the hardest step is drawing the logical conclusion. There is no solution. It's a total loss, a state bankruptcy, and the default will happen in the form of printing money. And if you know that, then you can really prepare yourself properly. And if you don't know that, then you'll be caught off guard. And suddenly it's like, oh, now my money is worthless. No one told me about this. But yes, it was all there to see. Here are the charts, here are the statistics, here are the numbers. I told you, Balachi told you, Elon Musk told you. Pretty much the whole Bitcoin space is telling you. Really, just thinking logically should make you realize, hey, you can't just print unlimited money and think that's going to increase wealth. I mean, what kind of arrogance is that? But yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people still just don't get it. They're just stuck in their bratwurst and ZDF coma, somehow trapped in the public broadcasting stream. Yeah, and that's the death story. But then we also had this story, which of course isn't quite as bullish as what we just looked at. David Bailey makes a very, very interesting statement here. He says here, we didn't get the Bitcoin and crypto tax change through in the Big Beautiful Bill. So you need to know what is meant here. There was the Big Beautiful Bill, and it was supposed to include a tax relief as well. At first, they wanted to introduce tax relief for 10,000 euros, meaning capital gains tax would only apply above 10,000 US dollars. Everything below that would be, how do you say, abolished. Then it was only 1,000 euros, then at some point 600 euros, then 300 not euros but dollars, then $300. And now they've just, well, completely scrapped it. People are saying this is frustrating. This is one of the most important issues we've been advocating for. Maybe we'll get it into a new bill or try again in the next fiscal year, but we will make it happen. Thanks to Cynthia Lummis for introducing it. Yeah, and I've already told you this before. If it had gone through, we would have basically had a dollar competitor here, and Bitcoin could have been treated the same as the US dollar. Not as legal tender, but at least in terms of tax treatment. And that would have been a huge deal for the Bitcoin space. It definitely would have had a big impact, but unfortunately, it just didn't go through. But I mean, we don't need to worry. Bitcoin will go its own way, whether with tax breaks or without them. And now we have Jack Mallers here, the CEO of 21 Capital. Let's quickly listen to what he has to say, because this is also highly explosive. It concerns the US and massive Bitcoin purchases.
On DC today, and with that in mind, is there anything that you would like to see specifically when it comes to crypto legislation?
The Bitcoin Act.
Okay.
As an American, I would love to see Senator Lummis's bill pass. I think it's strategically important that we not only support this industry and this asset class, but we own it. I think going back to our foundings as a country and how important we've been in the gold market, I think having zero Bitcoin or a rounding error amount is a strategic mistake, and the country gets that. President Trump gets that, and I'd like to see that pass.
He says, of course, it's way cooler for a country to actually hold Bitcoin than just to support it. And he also says that he thinks the legislation, the regulation will go through, that everything will pass, that the country will be per Bitcoin and so on. He also says the US checks, Donald Trump checks, the White House checks. Now it just needs to be executed, actually carried out. And that's always the big difference. For example, there are a lot of people who make a big fuss like, yeah, Bitcoin, blah, 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 this and that, but then they just don't follow through. For example, I probably already told you this, or yeah, others. Maybe I'll tell another story again. Now I just met someone else again. I mean, I'm always meeting people and I always hear the same story like, yeah, back then you already told me about Bitcoin and stuff, and yeah, but I never set it up and all that. I looked into it a bit, but then I never really finished it. And I'm like, no, you really have to inform yourself and then actually execute, really go through with it, set up a savings plan, maybe do some test purchases, small amounts. You don't have to start big right away, but you really have to go through the motions here and actually play it out. It's like when you say, yeah, I don't know, a melon that could be really sweet and it's kind of watery or something. But as long as you don't actually take a bite, as long as you don't try it yourself, it's really hard to describe what a melon tastes like. That's always the important thing in life. Yeah, theory is cool and knowledge is great too, but you also have to execute things. If you want to know what a melon tastes like, you have to take a bite of the melon. And if you want to know what it's like to be, I don't know, a professional handball player, then you have to become a professional handball player. And if you're not a professional handball player, then you also don't know what it's like to be a professional handball player. And if you've never been to El Salvador, you can speculate like, oh, it's cool and it's safe now and all that, but you can't really know what it's like in El Salvador until you've actually set foot there yourself. And it's exactly the same with Bitcoin. You have to take action here as well. And then not only do you get information on a whole different level, but you also have a completely different upside, a completely different investment, and you develop a totally different way of thinking about Bitcoin and, of course, potentially the purchasing power that comes with it. So if you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link for you below to 21 Bitcoin. Here you can buy Bitcoin easily, securely, and simply. With the code Bitcoin Hotel, you can get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. All right, see you guys. Until then, peace out.